Welcome in to Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they're living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. And boy, is it beautiful, especially this week. I'm your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a little guy raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the unique generations of the 70s and 80s. As I like to do, a warning. We try to have some fun here. We try to heal. It ranges from funny to serious, sarcasm, humor, and more. Never meant to offend. Simply my own brand of observation and sharing my own thoughts. Welcome, and please stay. I want to ask everyone listening, or anyone listening, what do you consider to be good news? Give it some thought before you answer. We live in a world that's filled with insanity, let's be honest with ourselves. But what do you consider to be good news? I think everybody likes to get some good news every now and then. It goes without saying. Our world today allows all of us to share any type of news, by the way, with the push of a button. Welcome to cell phones, the internet, and more. Whether it's text messaging or email or this WhatsApp thing, I've recently learned what it is. We can get any kind of news into our lives and into our souls in mere seconds. But I've never known a person in my entire life that actually likes getting bad news. Bad news can change your mood. It can ruin your day. And on the other end, it can change your life. Sometimes not for the best. But let's get back to good news. What do you consider to be good news? And how does it affect you once you receive it? I think of things like a couple announcing they're pregnant, or getting a new job, or getting accepted to a school you applied to. There are a million things that we can relate that would be considered good news. It might be even as simple as stepping on a scale after 2 months of gym time to see that you've lost a few pounds. Good news. Maybe you looked outside and saw that the weather was going to be sunny today. Good news. Maybe you consider rainy weather good news. There's people that do. I get it. On the more serious side, getting a clean bill of health from your doctor after a series of tests you've been taking is very good news. I'd say winning the lottery would be considered good news. Who wants to retire and call it? I do. For anyone that is ever associated with Jehovah's Witnesses, the term good news may elicit a slightly different response. It may be visceral. Good news, good news. In one of a dozen overused terms by this organization, the term good news is one we all learned at a young age as a witness. You remember, it probably all started with this verse. From Matthew 24, verse 14 of the New World Translation, we were told, quote, "And this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." End quote. In that chapter of the Bible, Jesus' apostles asked him what signs to look for regarding his presence, his return, and what to look for regarding the entire conclusion of this system of things. You remember they were on a mountain looking down at Jerusalem. They weren't thinking about the entire planet, subject for another day. Jesus' answer wasn't pretty. There would be war and food shortages. Many of them would be killed during persecution. There'd be bad guys. False prophets would arise saying that they represented Jesus. Who could, not going there this week. And that many people would cool off in their love for him. Then he uttered the verse we just read. A verse you can find thousands and thousands, if not millions of times in Watchtower literature. But it wasn't all bad. Jesus said that this was good news because what followed was his kingdom. He here forgets to mention living forever on a paradise earth, pet monkeys and endless salad bowls. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity. He could have explained it right there, but he didn't. He also here forgot to mention the exact date he would return, and that he would actually be completely invisible when he did return. but the governing body says so. At this point, he said no one knows the day or the hour. So don't get upset with him that he didn't mention it. Would be 1914 of the 20th century, or so we're told. Despite omitting a few very important details, according to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, this was all still good news. And so they use that verse in Matthew 24:14 judicious. They use it a lot. They use it a lot. And before we go another step, I need to mention my podcast partner. Jesus was a fan too. And so after claiming this was all good news, he emphasizes his point by mentioning someone we all know and love. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 37 through 39 of the New World Translation, Jesus then said this, quote, "For just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying, and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they took no note until the flood came and swept them all away. So the presence of the Son of Man will be." End quote. Noah. And there he is. A couple of quick points regarding this comment from Jesus. Well, that whole promise Jehovah made in Genesis 9:15 saying he would, never again drown everyone is reassuring. But you'll note he never said anything about earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and giant balls of hail. And second, the apostles were obviously very familiar with Noah as well. You know he's my favorite, but still knew nothing about penguins. I know, you're thinking he's losing his mind. He's losing his mind. Here comes a random thought. I'm sorry, I share them when they pop into my head. Noah did, of course. He knew about penguins because, well, he rounded 2 of them up. You remember. I pictured those 2 penguins that Noah captured still walking to the, Antarctica, not yet discovered, during Jesus' conversation about good news with his apostles. The apostles knew who Noah was, but just think, they still, at this point, had never seen a penguin. Europeans may have been the first to see penguins when Portuguese explorer Bartholomew Diaz reached the Cape of Good Hope off the southern tip of Africa in 1488. Not yet happening. Just a small example of the stupid things I think about when I read this chapter in Matthew 24. But let's get back to good news. I know I got off the rails there a little bit, but Noah, he's a guy. He's a thing with me. I just recently finished, and let me tell you right now, it was brutal. The 2024 Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses, aptly titled Declare the Good News. And I have to here give a full confession. I hit fast forward a lot. I felt my brain cells dying watching this thing. I have to share an honest opinion, and I hope I don't offend anyone with this. I just want to say, what has happened to the speakers in this organization? What has happened? The speakers in this organization have gotten so much worse. Maybe it's just me, but there is zero personality. The illustrations are basic and often make no sense at all. And I have to tell you, many times while I watched it, I felt myself relating it to George Orwell's 1984. There is just zero personality in these guys anymore. I had to look for something fun, and I found it. I got to be honest, I was looking for something fun while I felt myself wanting to bash my head against the desk, and I found it. You know what it was? I found myself comparing the beards. His looks good. His is long. He should do away with his. Who had style and who didn't? I continue to be amazed at how dumbed down this religion has become. Summer conventions used to just be everything and anything that we look forward to. I spoke last week about symposiums and the deep secrets of prophecy that we would go through for hours and hours. Not anymore, folks. Not anymore. It is incredibly dumb, and the speakers are incredibly bland. And that's my opinion, and I'm not bashing on those gentlemen that get on stage. It's just incredible how bad it's gotten. So with all that said, I want to highlight the final talk on the final day, Sunday afternoon of the 2024 Good News Convention. Then I'm confident at that point I'm going to put this convention to bed forever. Late Sunday, in a time slot that used to be reserved back in the day for the biggest of big shots in the organization, including some governing body members, Jehovah's Witnesses are treated to a talk by Kent Fisher, U.S. Branch Committee member, who oddly, and I'm not trying to be offensive, I'm just saying, who oddly looks like the grandson of Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken fame here in the United States. Am I alone? If you've seen this video, take a look. I thought, wow. I'm not slamming how the man looks. That's not it. He just really resembles a younger version of Colonel Sanders. And I found myself at that point craving mashed potatoes and gravy. Alas, he just resembles the guy that we all got used to at Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC. But back to this talk. This time slot used to be reserved for people like the former back in the day. Thanks for correcting me, by the way, you kind people. The district overseers or a visiting governing body member or Bethelite. You might remember this talk had zero format back then. The speaker would often drone on and on for over an hour. It was almost a poor man's summary of the entire convention, including experiences from around the world that no one could corroborate. We would clap multiple times during the final talk. Remember that? He'd say something, yay, everybody would clap. But then he'd say another story, yay, we'd all clap again. Then we were treated to what had to be the longest concluding prayer you would hear all year long. It was another public talk, but of course he was talking to Jehovah on behalf of the rest of us. You remember. I'm focusing this week on Brother Fisher's talk because it's chock full of sound bites that expose this organization for what it is. Once you are free of their mind control, most of us truly struggle to understand how anyone in that audience is buying into this crap. But this one isn't your typical closing talk, as I mentioned. Respectfully, this talk is given by, I'm sorry, a really boring speaker that, like everything in this convention, is making every effort to tap into emotion. They really go after the emotions the last few years. But this talk, final day, if you haven't seen the convention yet, is titled, Hold Firmly to the Good News. Why and how is the question. So brace yourselves. Like everyone in that audience, we can expect to get some good news, right? What follows may trigger a few of us. Just a warning. Brother Fisher starts out by saying the following, and I am quoting this verbatim, but as always, I encourage you to go watch the video if you can stand it. He says this, quote, "Now once we are convinced that Jesus is resurrected, that's foundation. What's built on that? My goodness, many, many good things. If Jesus was resurrected and went to heaven, it means now he's in heaven as the king of God's kingdom. It means he's already cleansed the heavens. Revelation tells us that. He's thrown Satan out." End quote. And now for an apology on my behalf. If you've heard this before, I'm sorry, but it never gets old for me, and I'm going to repeat it. First, he states all of this as fact to the audience. And did you happen to notice, whether you've seen it or you're just listening, what seems to be missing? Yeah, the Bible. Not one verse to back everything he says are all of this up as fact. But second, he then goes on to remind us that Jehovah and Jesus handle the most sadistic, vicious, bloodthirsty pervert ever created by letting him roam around their house in heaven for some unknown reason until 1914. And then, after reminding him they're going to kill him, which is sure to put him in a good mood, him and his friends, they were invited back as well, they punish him by sending that evil Satan to our house. That's right. They thought it was a good decision to send the bad guy to you and me in our place, here on earth. The doctrine of universal sovereignty teaches that Jehovah can't handle a bully. So after watching him turn other angels onto our human females, watching them have sex, then drowning their kids, and then watching on as Satan had a hand in killing his own son Jesus? Wait a minute. He still let him hang around his house in heaven until the same Jesus became king in 1914 and decided he was becoming a problem up there. But worse, he decided to punish Satan by sending him down the hallway to live with his kids until further notice. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? This seems like a very reasonable decision. But there on stage, Brother Fisher at the summer convention is regurgitating a basic teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's nothing new here. We all are familiar with universal sovereignty as it was taught, but I gotta tell you, I'm never tired of exposing how absurd that doctrine is. God is love. This is the worst person I know. Let's send him to my kids' room. Thanks for the reminder, Brother Fisher. So far, I gotta tell you, into this convention, I'm not feeling this good news you mentioned. You talk about Jesus' resurrection and him being in heaven now, apparently passively watching us all, and that is the foundation for a Jehovah's Witness to hang on to. You even ask in your talk, what's built on that? And you answer, many, many good things. Direct quote. But do you care to share a few of them? Are we curing disease today? Are you finally going to stand up and protect kids in this religion? Are you going to announce that this shunning thing you've been pushing hasn't worked out too well and you're going to mothball it? No, none of that good news is shared, folks. Instead, Brother Fisher in this talk goes on to tell us this. Are you ready? Quote, soon, there it is, soon. Soon he is going to act just as he saw in our sound drama. By the way, not covering it here, I recommend going to watch that. You'll see some fancy new illustrations of Jesus and his angels with swords hovering over people, just about to kill them all. You know, standard stuff we've seen in the Watchtower for decades. Back to his quote. Go watch the sound drama. Then he says, quote, to cleanse the earth and destroy the wicked and preserve the great crowd, end quote. Again, we've all heard this before. In fact, we've been hearing this in some form for well over a century for anyone associated with this organization. But, you know, it's still good news. So far, the good news that he shared is nothing more than old news, and not even news at that. It's just more repeating of what this organization has been saying since the late 1870s in one form or another. You gotta love words like soon. But with their membership dwindling and entire countries revoking their religious status, they've had to reach into that big bag of tricks to pull on the heartstrings a little bit. They've done it this entire convention, if you can stomach watching it. But definitely do it in this talk. And Brother Fisher is going for it. Because here is what he says next in this talk. Quote, that means it's not a fantasy for us to picture ourselves being in the new world. It's a sure certainty. Now for a moment, do that. Imagine yourself in the new world. You are 1 billion years old and you're just getting started. And you wake up in the morning and you realize, I don't have one ache, one pain or blemish on my body. Can you even picture that? I can't. End quote. And look, I recognize the teaching method. I used to employ it myself as an elder. Imagine yourself. Yeah. But this particular part of this talk was actually upsetting to me. Full disclosure, not only did I employ that as an elder, but I was one of those people that did that little exercise almost on a daily basis. It kept me going. This is truly everything to a Jehovah's Witness, especially to a person that's undergoing trials in life. Maybe they've recently lost someone they love. And it's nothing more than a sick fantasy. They now incorporate videos showing parents running towards resurrected children on the beach. They show old people being made young again. And in a move that really makes me sick, Lesson 27 from the Become Jehovah's Friend cartoon series featuring Caleb and Sophia, they actually feed children this fantasy. And I think that it's a trigger point for me, just bearing my soul here, because I was one of those kids. And now I see him doing it to other kids. I've covered this before, but Lesson 27 is titled, See Yourself in Paradise. Kids are led to believe they will get pet monkeys. They're seen with their parents in this cartoon looking at blueprints for the perfect beachside house with a pet elephant in the front yard. No, I am not kidding. All sarcasm aside, that's the cartoon, and you can find it currently on their Holy Spirit website. Sophia gets a butterfly garden, and she meets up with what looks like a resurrected Jewish girl. And well, Dad, he has developed his opera singing talents, and he lets us hear them. Song 139 of the same series for kids feature the video song See Yourself When All Is New. And it features a teenage girl who is obviously studying or a Jehovah's Witness, likely baptized, even though she's young, living in a ghetto, dreaming of paradise. She's lost someone she loves. She dreams of seeing them again. A panda family shows up to be her friend. Then a family of foxes show up to be her friend. And finally, the family member she lost appears to her in a forest. The music booms, tears everywhere. Mission successful. Brother Fisher in the convention is promoting an idea that they have promoted for well over a century. The idea to picture yourself in a perfect paradise earth has been forced on Jehovah's Witnesses since they suddenly decided to announce it, despite it not being in the Bible, in the year 1935. These men in New York have millions of people daydreaming and planning their entire lives around something that's as real as the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland. They employ this method regularly. And now they have the power to do it with video, CGI, and music booming. For those of us who grew up on illustrations and audio, this is next level. But Brother Fisher goes on to say this, quote, "The good news is that we don't have much longer to wait until that time." Jesus gave a sign that would mark the end of this wicked system of things. When this sign is completely fulfilled, God will rid the earth of all badness. That this sign is now being fulfilled, and that the end of this system of things is very near. End quote. directly from the final talk on the summer convention. What a nice idea, huh? As Brother Fisher told Jehovah's Witnesses this summer, quote, "It's a certainty." Oh, forgive me. That last quote was from the October 15th Watchtower article, "The Promise of Paradise." Jehovah's Witnesses were told it was a certainty as well. Wait a minute. The October 15th Watchtower, that's from 1980, 44 years ago. And all I have to say to this is that's a lot of daydreaming, Brother Fisher. A lot. Picturing myself there. Precious, unique people, souls, sitting in that audience or watching on video, are now and always have been wasting every single minute of their life daydreaming about a fantasy not found anywhere in the Bible and was certainly never taught by Jesus Christ of the Bible. See a past episode on the Paradise teaching if you're interested. In my opinion, this teaching is the biggest lie of all, and it began in 1935 with Judge Joe. And listen, if you're a Jehovah's Witness listening, you're in pain or you're anxious, please take the time to study in your own Bible. The paradise hope that Brother Fisher at the convention is wanting us all to picture ourselves in is taught nowhere. And it was certainly never taught by your king. It's the biggest lie of all. But Brother Fisher, in this talk, encourages everyone to imagine being what he says, 1,000,000,000 years old. Wow! 1,000,000,000 years? On a plant diet, riding dolphins, reading the Bible over and over and over again. Is anyone else writing books in paradise? No, we're going to study the Bible. And maybe asking Lot what the hell he was thinking. Or maybe conducting a Bible study with Moses where he reads his own story that by the way, he wrote in the Bible, first 5 books, and then he just kind of humors you and smiles along, reminiscing about that time he made a copper serpent or had all those Egyptian firstborn boys slaughtered. Heck, maybe one of those murdered little boys will sit in on the study. He got resurrected. Who knows? Why are we having a study with Moses about stuff he actually did and he actually wrote? We aren't sure. But we're told this by the governing body. And Brother Fisher wants us to imagine it. Just imagine. But as I imagined myself 1,000,000,000 years old, my mind went immediately to those single people that have themselves been living alone for 1,000,000,000 years in paradise because, they can't marry or have kids, according to the governing body's teachings. Thank you, faithful slave. Imagine being 1,000,000,000 years old and alone and with no children or family. It sounds amazing, Brother Fisher. Even better, those 2 people who loved each other in the old world, but one of them died and the other escaped fireballs in Armageddon and lived. But the governing body says they can't reunite or remarry in paradise. So for 1,000,000,000 years, they've had these awkward family dinners where their surviving kids and them just kind of all stare at each other, wondering why the hell these 2 people who started the family can't reunite in paradise. They're both single. It's been 1,000,000,000 years. But here's Brother Fisher, without a second thought to the crap they teach people in their magazines and publications, asking people to imagine being 1,000,000,000 years old in this quote-unquote paradise. Thanks for encouraging all of us to imagine this, Brother Fisher. It sounds amazing. But he continues in this talk where he says this, quote, "Now what about you? You've been serving for more than a day, for many days, maybe many months. many years, many decades. We commend you for your record of faithfulness to Jehovah, and we know Jehovah appreciates it even more than we do. There's a lot of we. And yet, no matter how long you've been holding firmly to the good news, none of us can afford to relax our hold on it. We are in the last of the last days of this system of things, and each passing day brings us closer to Armageddon. End quote. I want to remind everyone who is bravely listening right now and who may have even listened to this talk in person or watched it, he's speaking to grown adults. Yeah. And Brother Fisher wants all those watching and listening that there's a lot of we, huh? Yes, we want to commend you for all you're doing. Sounds like an elite group. It strikes me as so arrogant. Are we here for God and His Son? Or for these guys? Is that a slip up? Why do they matter? Why do we care what they think? Who is this we you speak of? I think we all know the answer. There's 9 faces. You can look it up. But aside from that, this organization continues to trot out speakers that continually remind everyone sitting in the audience that, well, everything they've ever told them and everything they've ever said and done it's always been wrong. This talk is proof of it. This talk is proof that they've always been wrong. That all of those listening have wasted decades of their lives with zero proof that the guys in New York are correct about a damn thing. Anything. How about just one thing? They've wasted decades of their lives slaving for things and obeying things that may change any second now with the next round of new light. And no apology is necessary if it happens. And despite this devastating blind allegiance to these men in New York, he then, Brother Fisher that is, tightens his grip around the neck of those listening with the reminder that, quote, no one can afford to relax. Why? For the same reason they've been saying for well over 100 years, quote, we are in the last of the last days, end quote, with nary a word on how these last days have already overlapped with the last round of last days in the 20th century. And according to their teachings, the faithful slave that is, these could then overlap with the next just as easily. Don't you dare relax. Everything overlaps, but we're in the last of the last of the last days. And in shocking fashion, this audience features Jehovah's Witnesses from several generations, no doubt, at least maybe three generations. Maybe in this audience there's a set of grandparents, mom and dad, and then the younger generation, maybe even 4. Maybe the younger generation are themselves having a family. But no one sitting in that audience, listening in on Brother Fisher, tell us that this is good news, that we're in the last of the last days, puts these teachings and these thoughts together in their head. No one will turn to each other and say, wow, I don't know, this might just be BS. And for anyone wondering why Jehovah's Witnesses have a high rate of depression and anxiety and much worse, here's your reason. There it is. It's not an accident that the final talk of the convention features the message, don't you dare relax. That's the thought they want them thinking when they walk out. Brother Fisher goes on to give us what I think is the doozy of the convention. Personal opinion, everyone can pick their own, but this is mine. When I heard this, frankly, I just sat there blank-faced. I just can't believe that anyone would utter this. Imagine my surprise. Okay. He says, quote, Armageddon. We saw that in our sound drama. Very dramatic words and revelation. Sobering, even a little frightening. End quote from Monet. You think? How do you think this is impacting the kids who are hearing this stuff and saw that sound drama? By the way, go watch it. Not going to cover it. You know, mayhem, violence, everything you'd expect from Armageddon. Back to what he says, quote, but brothers, let's remember this. Armageddon is good news. Because it's going to mean the salvation of the human family, including each of us. And more importantly, it's going to be about the sanctification of Jehovah God's name. There is no more worthy goal than that. It will be a day that we will never forget. End quote. Yeah, I'm sure the people that get hit by those fireballs will have a real good memory of it. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, you've heard all of this before. There's nothing new here. These talks have become painfully boring and repetitive. But this is it. The core doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses in just a few sentences. You see, this is it. This is what you've been knocking on doors for. This is what you've been standing at book carts. This is all the messaging in every informal witness you've given. It could be summarized in this. They're right. You're wrong. Get on board with them or die. That's it. That's the message. There it all is. But in a comment that I believe should be a Jehovah's Witness bumper sticker, or maybe they can make it a tagline on the jw.org logo. Wouldn't that be sweet? Armageddon is good news. Is it now? I'm not stupid. I have to confess. Sometimes I am, but I'm overall not stupid. I know why he considers Armageddon to be good news. From his standpoint, Brother Fisher and his bosses will be the last ones standing. So that's good news for them. Oh, and the rest of those that follow them, they'll get to stand up and be there too. It's still good news. He also goes on to state Jehovah's name will be sanctified. And when I heard him say that, I didn't have the heart to tell him that Jehovah is not the God of the Bible's name. Who wants to tell him? That the name Jehovah was created somewhere between the 13th and 15th century, likely by a priest Galatinus. Even Yahweh is nothing more than the scholars taking a best shot, a stab at the likely pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton. So Brother Fisher may want to fact check this. His organization didn't even adopt the name Jehovah until 1931. Sanctification of a name no one knows? And I want to go off the rails on this Yahweh's history thing, but I'm not going to. I encourage everyone to study it. But put all those easy-to-check facts aside by his comments. No one in the audience is thinking this way. I didn't used to think this way, so I can speak to it. No one's thinking about it. They're just listening and nodding their head. But put that aside. The governing body marched a guy in front of a camera to let the world know that Armageddon is good news. Is it now? Is that good news? At this point, I want to remind anyone listening just what Armageddon looks like as taught to the world by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. How about letting them tell us what a great day of Armageddon is, that it is indeed good news? How about we let them tell us in their own words? Here we go. From the Watchtower of February 1st, 1985, pages 3 and 4, we are told this about this great news surrounding Armageddon. Under the subheading, A Sanguinary War, quote, so devastating will Armageddon be that the carnage is referred to as a reaping of the harvest of the earth by means of a sharp sickle. And the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth, and he hurled it into the great winepress of the anger of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress as high up as the bridles of the horses, for a distance of 1,600 furlongs. Revelation 14 there. The article continues, quote, "Yes, blood will run deep under the hand of God's executional forces. The 69 million deaths of 2 world wars will pale in comparison to those slain in God's war of Armageddon. Concerning them, the prophet Jeremiah wrote, 'Those slain by Jehovah will certainly come to be in that day from one end of the earth clear to the other end of the earth. They will not be bewailed, neither will they be gathered up or be buried. As manure on the surface of the ground they will become. The burning missiles, fiery showers, and other cataclysmic forces that accompany God's judgment will strike terror into the hearts of mankind earthwide. In confusion, they will turn each one against his neighbor as God's executional forces strike without regard to age or sex. For God instructs them to show no mercy. Strike. Let not your eye feel sorry, and do not feel any compassion. Old man, young man, and virgin, and little child, and women, you should kill off to a ruination." End quote. Watchtower 85. Wow. Brother Fisher, thank you. Thank you so much, brother. I had completely lost sight of what good news Armageddon will be. This is good news indeed. I wonder how many Jehovah's Witnesses listening to this talk and not dozing off or looking at their iPhones instead are doing, I don't know, a little bit of quick math in their heads when he said that Armageddon is good news. Did they do the math? I'm guessing not many did or are. Well, hey, as a guy who hates math, I sat down for a second and I'm here. Let me help. There are today 8.1 billion people on Earth, and there are a professed 8.6 million baptized Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide. And I'm doing some quick math here. Let's see. Well, look at that. Armageddon really is some good news, Brother Fisher. Based on those facts and those numbers, here is some good news for anyone listening. Armageddon will feature 8,091,400,000 people, including old men, women, virgins, and little children, slaughtered. They'll be slaughtered before our very eyes. The blood will run deep. They won't be buried. Dead bodies everywhere. Brother Fisher, you rascal. This really is good news. This is great news. Thanks for the reminder. What? Just before I get a butterfly garden like Sophia in the video on the website, I get to watch all the kids in my school or in my neighborhood. I get to watch them slaughtered, swallowed by the earth, or maybe running for their lives as a fireball is aimed at their head. And when it hits them, they get to burn to death. I get to watch it. You heard it. It's right there in the scripture. It's right there in the Watchtower. Fiery missiles. Don't feel compassion. My next door neighbor, not a Jehovah's Witness, by the way, but he lets me borrow his lawnmower and tools every now and then. I get to see him and his family disintegrate before my very eyes. That family doctor that operated on my child, I'll wave to him as he's swallowed by the earth. 69 million people died in the world wars, and you want to remind me that that's child's play compared to what I get to watch in person in full color any second now. There will be so much blood in the streets, it will be flowing up to the necks of a horse, furlongs long, according to Jeremiah. Wow. Those nice people I work with will turn on each other for no reason and start killing each other. And again, you'll note that the governing body and the body, they want us to watch. Just watch them slaughter each other. Feel no compassion. I won't even get into their words about watching birds eat our guts. But as you've seen here from the Watchtower of 85, and Brother Fisher says is good news for Jehovah's Witnesses, we're not even going to bury us bad people. They're just going to be manure. I hope everybody's got a few pairs of shoes. That's a lot of bodies to walk around in paradise when you're going to eat your latest garden salad. But I got to tell you, it really is good news, Brother Fisher, when I'm told specifically to not feel sorry for them, feel no compassion. As an old man, a young man, a virgin, yeah, that's important because sex is still important. Don't feel sorry for a virgin. They never got to have sex. I don't feel sorry for them. Or even as it says, a little child and a woman. I shouldn't feel sorry for them as they're being slaughtered right in front of me. I promise not to feel bad at all. Does that make me a good guy, Brother Fisher? I won't feel bad at all, I promise. This is, by the way, doing wonders for my mental health at this very moment, especially me as an 8-year-old listening into this. Should I give Stephen Lett a thumbs up if I see him in the sky throwing fireballs at people? Because that's where he'll be. Maybe he'll kind of look at me, give me a wink and a smile, huh? Will he? I promise not to feel compassion for any of this. This is such good news. Armageddon is indeed good news. I can't wait to leave this convention and save lives by, I don't know, just passively standing in front of your publications on my book card. I promise to not let my eye feel sorry for any of the people that walk by because, I'm imagining myself in paradise. I always wanted a pet squirrel and a lifetime of garden salads every night for the rest of my life, even at 1 billion years old. And through all of this, Brother Fisher, and the governing body, Jehovah is really showing Satan, isn't he? Isn't he teaching Satan a heck of a lesson? He showed him. He showed him, after all, who's boss. And if you're uncomfortable and immediately default to this, well, gosh, Stacy, come on now. Jehovah can resurrect all those that didn't get to pick up a watchtower at my book card. Think again. From the Kingdom Ministry of 1968, March, page 4, quote, "The majority of people living today will probably be alive when Armageddon breaks out, and there are no resurrection hopes for those that are destroyed then," end quote. Or how about the Watchtower of 1993, October 1st, page 19, which says, quote, "There are billions of people who do not know Jehovah. Many of them, in ignorance, practice things that God's word shows to be wicked. If they persist in this course, they will be among those who perish during the Great Tribulation." End quote. God, this is good news. There it is, folks. This is what Jehovah's Witnesses, Brother Fisher, as the mouthpiece of the governing body and faithful and discreet slave, consider to be good news. Millions of Jehovah's Witnesses are listening to this talk at the summer convention, the final talk, and they're just kind of nodding along, sometimes giggling, and accepting whatever he says as good news. But just a reminder, they're not brainwashed. They're not captive to a concept, and this definitely isn't a cult, right? Brother Fisher's final talk isn't anything new for Jehovah's Witnesses. Imagine my surprise when I launched my internet browser and popped Armageddon into the Holy Spirit search bar on their website. And I'm guessing, I'm going to go full tilt, push all my chips on this side of the table. I'm guessing Brother Fisher and the governing body and the writing committee, they referenced what I'm about to share with you, this printed material for his final talk. I'm guessing it was part of the outline. Here is what I found when I popped in Armageddon. I found this. Armageddon is good news. Study Article 36 from the Watchtower, September 2019, paragraph 17. They had an article titled Armageddon is Good News. Sorry, I missed it in 2019. Not really. But it says this, quote, "The good news about our Lord Jesus includes all the truths that Jesus taught as found in God's Word. We obey the good news when we apply it in our lives. That obedience includes keeping kingdom interests in first place, living by God's righteous standards, and announcing God's kingdom. It also includes supporting Christ's anointed brothers as they care for their weighty responsibilities." End quote. But you may be wondering, well, maybe, how do I get to be part of all this good news? Here is the answer, exposing exactly what all of this is about. It's in this September 2019 article, paragraph 18, where it says, quote, "God's anointed servants will soon be able to return the kindness shown them by those of the other sheep." I guess it's by not throwing a fireball at them. Back to the quote. How so? Before the War of Armageddon begins, all of the 144,000 will have been raised to heaven as immortal spirits. End quote. That's right. Sam Hurd, Stephen Lett, Garrett Loesch, Mark Sanderson, Flegel, all of them. They'll be in heaven looking down on us during this momentous good news. Back to the article, quote, "They will then be part of the heavenly armies that will crush Gog and safeguard a great crowd of sheep-like ones." Yes, what a privilege the great crowd will have had to support Jehovah's anointed servants while these were still on earth. End quote. You see, for most of mankind, our lives only reach their full potential if or when we are supporting Stephen Lett, Sam Hurd, Garrett Loesch, and their other five pals. And it isn't it, I should say, reassuring to know that once they graduate from JW Broadcasting, their next stop is heaven itself, where they get to take part in killing every man, woman, virgin, and little child on this planet. Isn't that good news? I mean, when Mark Sanderson makes a funny on video, you better laugh along. He gets to decide on whether you live or die. How did you support him? Did you laugh at his jokes? And did I mention that not only does he get to make the decision, he's also the executioner? You better laugh at Mark Sanderson's jokes. Jeff Jackson lies, you better overlook that and support it. Armageddon really is good news when you're the guys making all the decisions. I hope that anything that's said here inspires a Jehovah's Witness listening to get their butt out of bed and just run to that book card. If you neglect handing out their publications and sending donations back to New York, well, do I really need to say it, folks? Do I need to? The last thing you may see in life is one of Stephen Lett's weird facial expressions as he opens the earth beneath you and you're swallowed up. And if you think I'm exaggerating, folks, that's the teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's it. And it's all such good news, isn't it? And if you're thinking this doesn't impact you, think again. You see, no matter who we are all part of this good news. You see, for an organization that claims we all have free will in this great fight between Jehovah and his own son, Satan, it's weird, well, it ain't really free will at all. Who or what we choose seems a little fixed. You tell me where the choice is for each of us. From the Watchtower of 1963, February 1st, pages 69 through 71, are the nations headed for Armageddon? Jehovah's Witnesses believe this, quote, since no worldly nation is free from demon influence today, every person is being forced to a decision, the consequences of which will be either life or death, survival or destruction. All who long for survival into God's new world must turn a deaf ear to unclean, demon-inspired expressions. Do not be misled with the nations to suffer defeat at Armageddon. Make your decision for God's kingdom, that you may be spared alive through the coming universal conflict, the war of the great day of God the Almighty. End quote. There's those pesky demons again. They're all around. Same guys who took a roll in the sack with our human women had baby giants and required Noah to gather those penguins and build a boat. Those demons, they're still all around these years later. And you likely notice that the governing body says, quote, every person is being forced to make a decision, end quote. Support them and live? Walk away and die. Ah, yes, free will. Isn't it something? It's truly free. No consequences at all. But most importantly, in the context of the summer convention, this is all good news, according to Brother Fisher. Let's bring it in for a hug, people. And this is Jehovah's Witnesses. The talk before this one was a dramatic Bible reading, complete with new illustrations I mentioned earlier, dramatic audio, and more. Brother Fisher wants us all to think that this is great stuff. And if you're not feeling better already, well, you're just spiritually weak. And maybe you need a shepherding call if you find this all to be anything less than good news. Brother Fisher, in his talk, then introduces the final video of the 2024 Summer Convention. I don't even know what to do with this. I was often embarrassed as a kid in that organization by the gross lack of self-awareness from leadership, the cheesy speakers, and the really corny messaging. But it might all be trumped by this abomination. He tells the audience that the video and song focus on the great privilege of preaching the good news, aka standing in front of a book cart at your local grocery store. The video features an original song that he says, quote, they've all been practicing and will be singing at the end of this program, end quote. And boy, I got to tell you, did George Orwell nail this thing in 1984. It is creepy. The audience is then treated to a montage of Jehovah's Witnesses over many centuries, handing out their literature, walking through fields, walking through snow, standing on street corners, holding up magazines, shots of Jesus on his throne in heaven, floating above them, watching them, and then some CGI angels, which appear to be wearing GoPro cameras, flying around in the sky, zipping in and out of houses and cities, watching Jehovah's Witnesses handing out their publications all over the world. And I couldn't help but think, I guess those real angels are kind of camera shy and couldn't be bothered with appearing in the video. But the video and song conclude with a CGI angel hovering over a house as an elderly couple speaks to a neighbor. All of it making me wonder, couldn't the angels have taken a break from being voyeurs and maybe saved people from an earthquake or two? Nah? Okay then. Handing out magazines is much more important. I got to tell you, I truly have no words. The theme of this entire convention is good news. And it wraps up with the comment, Armageddon is good news. How tragic is this? Truly, really, how tragic is all of this? People we love are there just nodding their heads. And if there any better proof of what this organization is than to get on stage, turn on a camera, and tell the masses that the violent destruction of anyone and everyone they see who doesn't believe in the 9 guys in New York is good news, then I don't know what will. Then they go on to remind them not to relax. Don't relax. Don't let up. They don't want to find themselves as part of what they call carnage that will cover the earth any day now. They don't want to do that. This whole convention, finally getting to the end of it, thank goodness, this whole convention centers around Jesus and the new movie he commissioned the governing body to make and produce about himself. Is anyone thinking about this? Jesus told you to make a movie about him? Who knows? But that's the theme of this convention, Jesus, his movie. And I found myself, thinking back to his words. And Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30 of the New World Translation, Jesus, the greatest teacher, said this, quote, "Come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for yourselves. For my yoke is kindly and my load is light." End quote. Anyone who saw this convention, are you feeling refreshed after the final talk of the 2024 Good News Convention? Are you feeling refreshed from the mild-tempered and kind Jesus Christ? It's the theme of the convention. But Armageddon is good news. As a kid, I sure loved going to the summer convention. I talked about it last week. And after watching this, I found myself drifting off to the cheese danishes. God, I love those things. I think I was traumatized, frankly, and I needed some comfort. Even now, as I watch this, and I reach for a cheese danish that's no longer there. But I started this episode by asking you what you consider to be good news. What was your answer? After watching this convention, I decided on what I considered good news. And it's this: I am completely free of this cult. And you can be too. I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be well.